All right. Hello, and welcome to our fourth season of interviewing the best and emerging hip hop artists, garden interests from homestead to commercial ag, and bourbon and whiskey distillers. My name is Joe Skibby, and this is Beats, Beds, and Browns, your spot for emerging hip hop artists, garden interests, and bourbon and whiskey distillers. We're pleased to be continuing our live stream interviews for our fourth season, allowing us to interview talented folks from throughout the globe. Our focus will always be Chicagoland. There's so many talented individuals outside of the region that we'll look to expand our reach. Remaining interviews this year or this season include April 24th, Glenda George Green with Baby Green's Family Farm. May 1st, Joel Q, champion of Chicago hip hop. And May 8th, Jesse Stewart Jr. with Alexander James Whiskey. Let's not forget our mission to distribute 100,000 heirloom seed kits over the next 10 years. We want to introduce people to growing their own food and realizing how easy it is to get started. Whether you've got acres or just a balcony, you can start growing your own food. To date, we've given out over 2,500 seed kits across the country. All right, tonight we have Paul Coughlin, founder of the Taconic Distillery. As the master distillery, nestled in the picturesque Hudson Valley of New York, Paul brings decades of expertise and a deep passion for the craft to every bottle they produce. With a background rooted in Wall Street, Paul's journey into the world of spirits began long before his tenure at Taconic. His fascination with the alchemy of fermentation and the nuanced flavors of aged spirits led him on a quest for knowledge, taking him from the historic distilleries of Scotland to the boutique whiskey bars of Kentucky. Drawing inspiration from both tradition and innovation, Paul's approach is a delicate balance of old world craftsmanship and modern technique. Whether he's meticulously selecting locally sourced grains or carefully monitoring the aging process in charred oak barrels, Paul's commitment to quality is evident in every sip of Taconic's award-winning spirits. Beyond his role as master distiller, Paul is also a fervent advocate of the craft spirits industry, championing sustainability, community engagement, and the preservation of heritage grains. Through his work, he not only creates exceptional spirits, but also fosters a sense of connection between the land, the people, and the rich history of the Hudson Valley. Join us as we delve into Paul's journey, exploring the artistry, innovation, and passion that define Taconic Distillery and the craft spirits movement as a whole. Welcome to the stage, Paul. We're going to start this interview just like we do all of them. Where have you been? Where are you at? And where are you going?
I like that. I need to use that intro. It's a very detailed, glamorous intro. So where am I? I grew up in Scarsdale, New York, Westchester County. 59 years old. Where am I going? I'm going to Africa on Sunday with a group of guys. It's my 17th trip over there.
Nice.
And then where are we going? I mean, in terms of I started this 10 years ago. It started as I run with my wife. I've got 3 grown daughters that are involved, and we have a whole crew as well. But kind of started as a gentleman's hobby that has turned into a legit commercial business. But I tell everyone that kind of my goal with this distillery is I'm trying to make, with a group of other people, New York bourbon relevant. That is where I want to go. One of the things that came up in a recent podcast is people are always talking about temperature, this, that. The temperature in the Hudson Valley, kind of lower New York State versus Kentucky, Tennessee, we are 1 degree colder. That is it. So we share the same temperature swings. We've got great water in New York. So, I mean, it's an uphill battle and every day we're fighting it, but I think that we can create a world-class product here. It's going to take us a longer time to build that reputation, but you've got half a dozen guys in New York doing a fantastic job. And I want them all to be successful.
Nice. And that's common amongst the distillers that we talk to. Everybody's working together, everybody's collaborating, everybody's sharing knowledge. Sounds like that's the same environment throughout New York. Tell me a little bit about how you ended up in a career in the distilled spirits industry. I've read a little bit about your history in Wall Street, and it doesn't seem to be a natural next step.
No, it's not at all. And if you told me I would be doing this 12 years ago, I would have bet a lot of money against it. So my background is in operational the operation side in buying and fixing troubled manufacturing businesses. So I did that. I got out of college. I worked at a commercial bank in a trading program, 1986. One of the rotations was in the troubled loan department. Kind of, I enjoyed that. And then went on to do that on my own. I ran a hedge fund from 1990 to 2001, sold my interest, started a private equity fund doing the same thing, taking controlling interest in troubled companies, and did that we started the distillery late 2013, early 2014, and then sold everything in the private equity business. And we've been doing this pretty much full time for 7 or 8 years, even though it's our 10th year. We raised our kids in Connecticut. It's probably an hour and a half away from the distillery. We're in the Hudson Valley. We are only 80 miles from the George Washington Bridge. So we're still close enough that you could, do a day trip to New York City, but far enough away that we're still very, very rural. We bought 120 acres up here in 2010. I'm a competitive shotgun shooter, competitive pistol shooter, and big 3-gun competitor. So I said we need to do something with this land. We have 120 acres. We thought about doing animals, a lot of work. And then we started growing corn. But in terms of backtracking a little bit, how did I get into this? In I don't know if it was 2011 or 12, we looked at a company that was in trouble that we saw an alcohol angle. So I spent a lot of time researching it and meeting people and talking to distilleries. We ended up not doing the transaction, but it kind of got me going on, hey, this is a business where you've got, a lot of big guys, very, very few small guys. I mean, the crafting really hadn't taken off in a big scale, 2013, 14. Obviously it had, and we were a beneficiary of riding that wave. So kind of got in it and with my wife, and we've been doing it ever since. There are a couple of reasons we got into bourbon versus other things. Number one, bourbon can only be made in the United States, so you know who your competition is. And you walk into a liquor store and there's a big sign that says bourbon. So I wouldn't want to do, I had one of my college roommates was looking at doing, South American Brazilian cachaça. And I said, hey, listen, you have at it, but people can't pronounce it. They can't spell it. There's nothing in a liquor store that says that. So kind of make it simple, stupid. The other thing with bourbon is you need a fair amount of capital because you need to either start with or spend the money aging the product. So that immediately is going to take a lot of people out that don't have the capital resources. And then the other thing, starting a business when you're 50, you've made a lot of mistakes in life. Hope you've learned from them. You got a little bit of a bank account and you got a Rolodex. So, I mean, listen, not to say that I didn't bang my head against the wall last 10 years, but I probably would have banged my head a lot harder if I started it when I was 30 versus starting it at 50.
Sure. And you had all the experience of running and saving and seeing the mistakes that other business owners have made.
And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of the people in the business, and I try to be very helpful of anyone that calls me up and says, hey, I'm trying to do this. Do you have any advice? I spent a lot of time visiting people 2012 and 2013. And my main question is, not what did you do right, but what did you do wrong? Because the good things will take care of themselves. You need to try to avoid mistakes. And as I say to my kids and the guys at work, I said, as I get older, I just want to make less expensive mistakes. Expensive mistakes can hurt.
That makes sense. And so many questions stemming from that brief little intro you provided. And, 120 acres, is this already farmed land? Is this wilderness? Has this been livestock land prior?
So it started out, it was auctioned off. I don't know how many the whole farm was. Probably might have been 1,000 acres, 1,200 acres. It was, it started off as a beef farm that was auctioned off into developed real estate in 1999. We bought the 120 in 2 lots. They're contiguous. I think 2009, 2010, but it was all dirt. There were nothing was on it. We've got streams, we've got wetlands, we've got forestry, but nothing built. So we've developed the entire thing.
With any prior farm knowledge, or did you hire staff or wing it? How did that work?
No, I mean a lot. We'll grow. We have guys that will, do all the machinery, the tilling, and all that stuff, and then come harvest it. So we probably on a good year will get 10 to 12 tons of grain off of our farm, which is very little. We go through about 4,000 pounds a day of grain. So what we can get off our property is 10 days of production. All the other supplemental grains come from two farms. One of them is, say, 8 miles away, and the other one's 12. So it's all New York product, which it has to be in order for us to take advantage of all the farm distillery license in New York.
Okay. Yeah, we just talked, a couple different Illinois distillers, and they're really working with proprietary grain and things that have been nurtured throughout the history of the farm. We're talking 100-year farms. Tell me about some of the contributing farms, some of the grain that goes in.
So the two guys we use is one is Migliorelli Farms, who runs a huge farm stand up by us up in Red Hook. And the other one is a guy that's Ken Migliorelli. And the other one is Mike Lawrence in Millbrook of Northview Farms. And those guys they both do rye and corn. And then Migliorelli does all the malted barley as well. And then we bring it to a malt house.
And are you guys using all local barrels as well, or?
No. So since day one, we have gone. I don't know if there were a lot of local barrels manufacturers 10 years ago. We get everything from Independent Stave, which is the largest barrel manufacturer probably in the world. And we've been doing it, and we use 53-gallon barrels from day one. A lot of guys would use smaller ones because they weren't going to age it for a long time to get the surface area. We've done everything 53s from day one. And the reason to do that is because, the same thing why we only buy from 2 farms and not, 20 farms, is the goal is to have a consistent product. So same corn, same enzymes, same yeast, same barrels, same temperature climate. Because when people come here and do a barrel pick, and we had it today, where they want to see 5 or 6 barrels and pick one, I like it when it's very difficult for them to choose one barrel over the other. That means we're consistent from barrel to barrel to barrel. It would bother me if someone came in and said, we really like this barrel much better than we don't like these barrels. That means that there's something I'm doing wrong. And I always tell people that's the brilliance of McDonald's and Budweiser is anywhere you go in the world, it's the same product. So we're trying to do that here. And that's why we do the same barrels, same grain, same water source, the whole deal is continuity in product.
You talked about some of the financial difficulties of definitely starting out and only focusing on brown spirits and not taking some of the easy cash that comes with the gin and vodka and some of the quicker turn products. Outside of the financial hardship of overcoming that, you've got storage issues, you've got build out for marketing. Talk to me about some of the early challenges.
So one of the early challenges ended up turning into something that was very, very beneficial. So we started out. Now we've got several buildings, but we started out in literally a 20 by 24 red barn. So right away you run into storage issues. So we started getting shipping containers, which back then where you could buy them cheap, and putting the barrels in wine racks, shipping containers, and in a 40-foot regular container, we can get 66 53-gallon bourbon barrels. So, but the benefit was your heat transfer, because what you want, people are always amazed when they come and take tours. All booze comes off the still clear. Anything that's brown has been aged in a bourbon barrel, whether it's rum, scotch, obviously bourbon, rye is going to be, they're all new barrels except for the other things. So we're going to get literally 60% of the flavor from the wood and about 100% of the color. So the benefit of the containers are there is massive temperature swings in those things and very little airflow. So in August, if I were to open a container, you couldn't really go more than 10 feet in the thing because the angel share is so pungent because of the lack of airflow. And we still have 14, even though we've got additional rick houses, we still have and continue to add shipping containers when we can, because not that you can cheat the aging process, but I think that definitely, I would rather have a 4-year shipping container than a 5-year rick house, just because of that the temperature swings. It's brutal.
And so those wide swings, you talked about the angel share, that's the absorption, the dehydration of the spirit. But then with the temperature swings is how you're getting absorbed into the bottle and picking up some of the flora and fauna of the wood.
Yeah, and I think that helped us in the early stage because, now our bourbon is 6.5 years old. The rye we're selling is 7.5 years old. But in the beginning, when we were selling a straight bourbon right after it became 2 years old, it had a lot of flavor and a lot of color. And I think the benefit was being in those shipping containers for 2 years.
And what variability do you see now that you've got the additional rick houses? Are you pulling out different products from the different locations? Is there significant flavor swings and different pulls from each of those?
We try to pull a little bit from everywhere to maintain. So in one of the rick houses, it's 5 high. So if we're going to pull something, like I won't pull all from the 5th level. I'll pull 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And try to maintain that flavor profile that way. And I'll also get different angel share depending on how high they are in the temperature. So 5 high in a rick house, you go up to the top, it's like a crazy sauna. Whereas on the bottom, it could be fine.
Yeah.
The temperature differential is shocking.
So I know you guys are tied closely to the outdoor activities, and you mentioned some of your trips and the gun sports that you're involved in. How does that tie into the brand, and how do you guys make that? Is that a passion play? Is that more tied to the brand? What type of engagement?
Yeah, the people involved in this business, myself, our family, my friends, we're conservationists deep down. We care about the environment. We actually, with our spent mash, we end up feeding 200 beef cows a day. So we're trying to have not a carbon neutral, but we're trying to make sure that there's no waste and everything is used as much as possible. So you can be at the distillery sipping a bourbon and eating a hamburger, that the meat from that cow was eating the mash that made the bourbon that you're drinking. So it kind of all goes together. But our whole pitch is, and if you ever see the place, it's a beautiful location. We've got the rolling hills, we've got picnic areas, fire pits, but we want to make a product that is to be shared with your friends and family by a campfire. That's that's the image we want to produce. And we're up here in the Hudson Valley, where it's, big shotgun, big bird hunting, dogs, foxes, horses. It's a very outdoor, rural place to be.
Sure. Talk to me about distribution and how far throughout the United States you guys are shipping, and where you've got distributor relations. And
Yep. That's the bane of my existence. So we were much larger. I've since pulled it back. Our case count still continues to go up, but my focus is going to be, obviously our big focus is New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, because that is the biggest market in the world, specifically the tri-state area. So that's our focus. I was on the West Coast in several states. I was in the Midwest. I was in the Southwest. We still stayed in some of those, but a lot of those, I can't service those markets efficiently. Whereas the states I mentioned initially, I can drive to all those states and spend time there without impacting my schedule that much. Right now, I think we're in 22 states. My preference is to stay east of the Mississippi on states that touch the water. And then you've got a couple things on the East Coast where you've got control states, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. That's a big headache because control states have stores where you've got inventory and checkout people. There's really no hand selling of the product. So unless it's a widely recognized brand, it's very difficult for guys like me to get into those stores.
Yeah, fair enough. And
Yeah,
I think I read somewhere 45 cases a month to over 400. Is that?
Oh yeah. Well, no. I mean, right now we were under 15,000 cases last year. I think our first year was 400.
Nice. And what you close work with all the entire family and all friends, or how does that work?
Yeah, so now my wife and I are involved. The 3 kids, 2 of them live in the city. The third one is over in Spain teaching English, all girls. But when the kids were in college, they went to school down in DC. I wouldn't say they were forced, but they had to do tastings and events kind of every other Friday. They had to feel the pain of the family business. And in the city now, whenever we have events, they're much more willing to do it now.
Nice.
But yeah, definitely fan. But then we have a whole crew. Then we have 4 guys that run the still. We've got 10 people doing retail and markets, and we've got salespeople for each specific state. So we got a crew of probably 22, 23 people.
Nice. Congratulations. That's incredible. Yeah. Just starting out, you had some exposure to the spirits industry. What are some of the shocking things you've faced over the years that kind of came out of left field on you?
I mean, the biggest, well, there are a couple funny stories. The biggest issue was always distribution, because no matter how big we get within reason, we will never be relevant to a distributor. You've got, the Jack Daniels, the Jim Beams, the Buffalo Trace, the Tito's. Those are the guys paying the bills and keeping the lights on at the distributors. So it's we fight to be relevant every day, but it's very difficult for us to get the face time. But, listen, that's the nature of the beast. I didn't know it as much when I got into it, but that's what keeps us out there every single day going after it. But the funny story is when we built the new facility in 2016, and it's, like as I said, it's rural. We had a utility pole out front, line, electric lines, whatever. And I didn't know the difference between single phase and 3-phase electricity. Do you know the difference?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. All right. So that was an expensive lesson. So mainly the chiller, a lot of the equipment uses 3-phase. So we call up the utility, and the closest 3-phase hookup was 7,000 feet, so over a mile. And think about all those poles and all that wire. So it basically took 15 months of my life of battling these guys. We ended up getting it done. But when anyone ever says to me, lessons learned, or what are the things on your checklist? There are 3 things. You got to have the right power source. You got to have a lot of water, and whatever money you think you need, double it, because something's going to happen.
So they had to run that 3-phase from 7,000 feet away before
7,000 feet.
Yeah, before you could tap in.
Yeah, and the other thing is you couldn't use all the existing poles, because 3-phase needs a different pole, and the distance between poles has to be shorter. So it was, as I said, I want my mistakes to become less expensive.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was all you had to foot the bill for that, or they offset, or
no? And if somebody down the road from me does something else that needs 3-phase, so it dead ends at us. If my neighbor were to do something, I get no recoupment. So, but that, listen, that's life.
Well, yeah, and like you said, less expensive mistakes, right? Yeah. You take your lumps and you move on. Tell me about the brand and the label and the connection to the family dog and the hunting industry and throughout the Hudson Valley.
So the dog is it's an American foxhound. Let me see if I can get this thing right. I'll tell you about this label. This is kind of a funny label. So it's an American foxhound, and the dog, people can figure it out when they see the back of the tail. So this could be, a Weimaraner, German short hair, but all those dogs have their tails clipped. The foxhounds still have the long tails. So it is a working dog. They take any working dog, any sort of hound or bird dog takes a tremendous amount of energy. And if you don't burn off that energy, you're going to have problems. But the other thing with the foxhounds, and they're pretty good sized dogs. They're about 80, 90 pounds when they're grown up, and they live in packs. I mean, these are not pets. Normally they live, 30, 40 in kennels outside. They're definitely not house pets, but they were used during Prohibition because if you listen to any of the hounds, they really don't bark, they howl. And that sound carried much, much further than a traditional dog bark. So they were used by moonshiners during Prohibition to let them know if something was coming. And we named the dog after Copper, after the copper color of the booze, and then the still. So this is our straight bourbon whiskey. But my kids all went to Georgetown, and when they graduated, we did the Hoya Blue and Gray, which became a big thing down in the DC area. All the bars wanted it, and then everyone started ordering it down there. All my classmates. I went there too.
Nice.
So that was fun to play around with that.
So you just need a different color for each university, and that you're in.
Well, luckily the kids all went to the same school, so it made it easy. But we did one for a UVM guy, which was I think it was white. I don't know if it was white and no, it's Vermont is, I think it's green and yellow.
Green.
And then Michigan, you do the maize and the blue. So we play around with that stuff.
Nice. And what does your product line look like currently?
So the three main SKUs we have a straight bourbon whiskey. We do it in a 90 and a 115 proof. We have a straight rye whiskey that we do same thing, 90 and 115. And then we do a double barrel maple bourbon, which kind of gets us two products. So we take the bourbon barrels, 53 gallons, dump them out, fill those barrels with organic New York State maple syrup. 4 months later, that's pasteurized and sold as bourbon barrel aged maple syrup, which is a whole nother product line. It's, pancakes, waffles, cereal, ice cream. The alcohol all gets taken out. But then we take those glazed barrels and put the bourbon back in, and then let it sit in a container for 6 months so you get some additional movement in and out of the wood. We do that in a 90 and a 115 as well. That product is our number one barrel pick. The straight bourbon whiskey is our number one selling SKU, but it's interesting. I think a lot of it is down south. They don't have the maple trees, so it's a big seller. And then we've done a couple finishes. We do a straight bourbon whiskey in a Japanese Mizunara cask once a year. And then we've done port finishes, cognac finishes, stout barrels. Besides the maple syrup, another big end use of our bourbon barrels is beer guys love aging stouts and these things. So we do a lot with those guys as well. All of that stuff is sold at the store. In terms of the wholesale business with distributors, it's pretty much the three SKUs at 90 and 115.
Nice. And collaboration with some of the barrel-aged beer guys. We've seen a number, cherry barrels, the Amberana. We're starting to see a lot more of.
Yeah.
What do you see as the future, the next kind of thing that you guys might be sampling or researching?
Well, we also do a bourbon barrel aged coffee, which is kind of cool. And so we try to keep as much stuff in New York. So we do a straight bourbon whiskey in a Cabernet. We have a Long Island vineyard that we do that with. The maple syrup we do with Catskill Mountain Sugar House, which is over in Sullivan County, other side of the river. The coffees we do with Shapira's, which is in Pine Plains, 9 miles north. All the breweries we've done, for the most part, are in New York State.
Nice.
So if you can find another product that we can do in a bourbon barrel, we'll get after
it. Sounds good. I'll keep my ears out. We're talking to a lot of folks, which, you could talk to a lot of folks too, right? You were visiting other distilleries, other brands. Talk to me about things you picked up from them that you're applying, or things that might be down the pipeline.
Well, what have we? So a lot of it is, I always say we've been doing the double barrel maple bourbon for a long time. A lot of people have copied that. I'm trying to think of anything. I always say if someone else has a good idea, I'll copy it as well. We have not, besides picking labels and stuff here and there, we really haven't copied anything. Although I'm looking for a good idea to do it with. But as of now, we tend to be in the forefront of some of these things.
And do you guys, you're on site, you have like distillery tours, you've got the merch lined up. You said burgers, you guys have a restaurant as well.
So what we do is we've got a tasting room and a retail store right attached to the distillery. And then outside we've got patio, fire pits, picnic tables, and a couple picnic areas. And we try not to do food there per se. We usually do food trucks and live music. So bring it in because it's one less headache to deal with in terms of the health department. Right? You have a commercial kitchen, you got another government entity that's coming there way too often. So that's what we do.
Sure. And speaking of government entities, right, being federally regulated, that has to present challenges, if not just with paperwork, then other red tape that you guys have to work through. What are some of the bigger challenges you've faced?
Yeah, so that stuff, I mean, the biggest, we have to do New York State and TTB every single month. It takes a couple months to figure it out, but I do that stuff and I do it every single month. And I think if I didn't do it for 2 or 3 months, I would lose that skill set because it's crazy detail. But if you keep doing it, you get used to it.
And is that the same paperwork month after month, or it changes? Or
it's the same thing. The crazy thing was so all the TTB, ATF stuff is all done in terms of proof gallons. The genius is at New York State, we have to convert to liters. It should all be the same. They should both use proof gallons, but welcome to New York. Yeah. But it's, I got to tell you, they are very easy to work with. We have not had any issues. The label process that the TTB does, I think, is very fair and very fast. And then once it's done by TTB, New York State, everything is done online now, so it's very easy to do everything. I don't have any gripes with the government organization of that.
Nice. So, our thing is beets, beds, and browns, and you seem to have the beds down with your corn farming, the browns for sure with your distilling. What are you guys jamming out to when you're distilling, when you're working in the shop?
Well, the problem is we have a huge discrepancy in age. So I'm the oldest guy at 59. The youngest guy is 22. We have a Sonos or Spotify, whatever. Yeah. And the music constantly changes during the day depending on who's got control of the thing.
Nice.
So there's another guy, Butch Jones, and we bottle every Tuesday, and that's music trivia. We'll play 70s and 80s, and the first one to come up with the band and the name of the song. I'm a huge classic rock. I'm a huge Tom Petty fan.
Nice.
So I'll listen to that. I told the kids, no gangster stuff, none of that stuff in the distillery. Yeah. But we play everything. So there's nothing, but it's going to gravitate towards your classic rock. And I tell my children, we grew up with the greatest generation, the greatest music, no cell phones, and I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Yeah, without a doubt. What are you looking to bag when you're overseas hunting?
A baby panda, a giraffe, a tiger.
Nice.
Now you'd be amazed that I tell people that, and they believe me.
Yeah. No unicorns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's next. Most of this, is my 17th trip. My goal now is to try to. We always try to bring 2 or 3 guys that have never been over there and experience the whole, the hunt, the chase, and everything. So I'll shoot some camp meat if they've got some cull stuff. I'm no longer a trophy hunter. My goal is to kind of get and I'm taking a couple guys from the distillery over. We're doing a whole bunch of maintenance, so I figured it's a good opportunity to, we're not using the still for 2 weeks. Get some of the guys over there. We got a group of 5 going over, and just experience it the way. Experience it the way it was or always has been.
Yeah. Nice.
And then everything that you shoot over there, you can bring back skins and horns and antlers, but all the meat goes to the people. So anything you shoot, you'll take out your tenderloins and your backstrap, but everything else goes right to the local village, right to the people. So it is nice to see an animal harvested and immediately put to use.
Yeah, no waste for sure.
Yeah.
What you mentioned some of the regenerative farm type stuff that you're doing, and I know barrels. We've heard from other distillers, just a shortage of wood of the appropriate height and age. With your conservation efforts, what do you see as challenges that you might face environmentally in the future?
So, well, the barrel stuff is interesting because it kind of ebbs and flows. So when we first got going, it was fine, and then the barrels got tight, and then the price went up, and all of a sudden, additional guys came in the market now. So the barrels are okay now. I think you're also starting to see some people go. We had 20 guys go out of business in New York this year, unfortunately. So I think that there's not. I don't believe there to be a barrel shortage. And then the other thing, what we do is if we have barrels that no one's using, we will take them apart and cut them into pieces and use them. I mean, you can cook on them the same way people cook on cedar. So we use them for that. In terms of environmental stuff, we obviously rotate the grains because corn totally sucks all the nutrients out. We've got a lot of wetlands that are good. Every time we stock the stream, or the pond, 2 days later, I have egrets and eagles showing up. So I'm paying for those guys to eat.
Nice.
But it's it's a great piece of property.
Fantastic. So, I stress that I'm not an expert in any of this, and most of the people that we've got following are either new to bourbon or trying it for the first few times. What would you tell us as someone who's a future customer of Taconic? What should we be enjoying when we're digging into your product?
Well, what I always say for when people are starting out, and I'm a big fan of cocktails, is if you're starting out, drink old fashions, which are primarily bourbon. You can make them with rye and Manhattans, then you can work your way into Boulevardiers, paper planes. But if you told me I could only have one cocktail the rest of my life, I would have an old fashioned. And the other thing is you can tune it up or down depending on. I'm not a big fan of bitters. I don't like because bourbon is sweet, a couple dashes, but you can definitely go to a place where they over bitter it. But you can take a lot of the sting out if you put a little more. We don't use simple syrup. We use our maple syrup.
Yep.
So I'm a big fan, and we judge places by their ice cubes and their cherries. If you're giving me soda ice and a Shirley Temple cherry, it's going back. You need a nice cube. I mean, there's a huge business on the East Coast, and you guys probably have in Chicago. You're in Chicago, right?
Yeah, just outside.
All right. New York City of, clear, not only the big cubes, but clear glass with logos or clear ice. And then if you don't have a Luxardo cherry, you have failed as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Well, tips from the master, Paul. We appreciate your time and giving it to share with our audience. We appreciate you, and I'm going to pull you out of the room, close out, and then you and I can cut it up before we shut the show down.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for your time, Paul. All right. That was Paul Coughlin with Taconic Distillery out of the Hudson Valley of New York. We couldn't be happier to have him join, and you as well. Remember, Beets, Beds, and Browns is an ag advocacy brand focused on educating people on how to eat healthy, sustainably, and inexpensively. Start your gardening journey today and grab your free seed kit at beetsbedsbrowns.com. You can listen to our thoughts via our video podcast on YouTube and or your streaming venue of choice. Follow our progress on your social media via the hashtag 100K in 10 years or directly via @BeetsBedsandBrowns. Thank you guys and happy planting.